In this video, I am going to be teaching you about the official way that a soldier would request for a medical evacuation. What's up, friends? Welcome to an all-new video. In this one, I'm going to be teaching you about how a soldier would go about officially requesting for a medical evacuation, otherwise known as a medevac, and this will kind of show you the process that a soldier would go through, known as a 9-line medevac. Before we get this video started, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you are not already. Also enable notifications, that way you get alerted when new videos drop, as well as get notifications when I go live. So let's break down a 9-line medevac. Now, in the name, it says 9-line because there are 9 lines. There's 9 kind of sections to this official report to be able to send out to try to get somebody to come out and evacuate a casualty that a soldier may have. Now, there are 2 ways that a soldier could be going about to request this 9-line medevac. The first one is usually the primary one, which is FM, otherwise the radio, the SINGAR's radio, whatever type of radio system they have in their vehicle or on their person. The radio is usually the primary, where the secondary is a system known as JCR, Blue Force Tracker, however you want to kind of call it. It's just a navigation system that is a digital computer inside their vehicle typically, and that's another form of way that they could request for that medevac. Primary, again, being the radio, but there are going to be times where they may be out of radio comms because they're too far away or whatever the case might be, and then they have to go to their backup, which would be that FBCB2 Blue Force Tracker system. So I'm going to go through and break down line by line how this 9-line medevac report works, how it would be called up, and what information is involved in that. Now, typically they say that the first 5 lines will get the bird in the air, but sometimes that can vary based on situations and stuff. It may require more lines, may require less lines. They may already have somebody in the area and they're just relaying this on the way. But typically when you're doing this type of training, they're usually teaching soldiers that the first 5 lines will get the bird in the air. But like I said, that can vary based on different situations as well. So let's start off with line 1 of this report. Line 1 is the pickup location for the medevac. Now, this could be the location where the soldiers are at. They could be a different location somewhere else. It just depends on the situation. If they are somewhere where it is safe to be able to have a bird come land at that location, then maybe that current location could be their pickup site. In other cases, they might want to move somewhere else. Maybe they have a casualty collection point, as they are called. Maybe somewhere nearby that's a better landing zone, a better area to be able to have that bird come into, or maybe they have to move out of, hostile danger area. Maybe they're currently receiving fire and it's too dangerous to have the helicopter come land in that area, so maybe they're able to safely move out of that area, get that casualty to another location for a better pickup location, and they can do that one. But this first line is the location where they would like the helicopter to come land. Now, keep in mind, in this report, I'm pretty much talking about via rotary wing for medevac to come land with a helicopter. For the evacuation, you could have a ground evacuation if that is needed, if it's somewhere where you can get them there quicker that way. But most cases, when it's an emergency, you're going to have a helicopter come land to accomplish that medevac. Next is line 2, and that is the call sign and frequency. The call sign is whatever call sign the person is going to be going by that they might need to, communicate to them via radio. So the person could be sending this, report via radio or via that Blue Force Tracker system. But when the helicopter gets nearby, they need to know what frequency that convoy or that unit is going to be on, so they can switch to that frequency, and what call sign to call for on the radio. So if they have a call sign of, let's say, Chaos 7, right? Then they're able to call for Chaos 7 to talk to them, maybe asking for additional information or any other details they might need to know, and they need to know what frequency they're going to be on the SINGAR's radio system. Next is line number 3, and that is the precedence of the patient. There are 3 main types that they go off of. It's basically telling that individual what the precedence of this patient is. Do you need to hurry up and get here? Can you take a little bit of time? Or is it kind of just a whenever you can get to a type of situation? The 3 main types is urgent, priority, and routine. Now, there's also some other cases where you have like urgent surgical and convenience, and maybe even some other ones, but those are the 3 main ones that are usually the ones that soldiers are using when they're calling up this report, is that urgent, priority, or routine. Now, urgent means we need you as soon as possible. This person needs to get medical treatment, needs to get help, or they could possibly lose a life, limb, or eyesight, something like that, and we need you here ASAP. The next one is a priority. That one could be, you can take a little bit more time, not too much time though. Otherwise, if you take too long, then they're gonna move up to an urgent kind of status. So maybe like 3-4 hours. But if you're not here within that time frame, this person could, become, very serious, could be losing too much blood, and could become an urgent one. So we need you here within a certain time frame before it escalates to an urgent. And then there's routine. That could be within 24 hours. And routine could be something, fairly minor where we need a medevac because maybe we're in a remote location where it's going to be too hard to evacuate this person out of here. It's not something that's, life-threatening, but it's something they need to get some treatment for. Maybe they got injured and broke their foot, broke their leg or something like that. Something we can take care of where they're not going to die from this in a few hours, but something that if we let it go for too long, it can become a problem, right? We can, cause this person a lot of pain or whatever. So we need you, within about 24 hours, come pick this person up so that they get medical treatment. Next, let's move on to line number 4, which is special equipment. This is basically you're requesting for equipment. Maybe you're requesting for whole blood because this person is bleeding out and you need them to have blood aboard the aircraft to be able to, help replenish that blood that they're losing. You might have backboards, maybe they have some kind of spine injury, maybe a neck brace, maybe you need like a ventilator. There's a lot of different kind of situations where you might need some special equipment based on the injury that this individual has received. A very common one, especially like if a soldier is not able to walk on their own and they have to be carried, is a litter. Usually with a convoy, with a unit, they're gonna have their own litters, and you're gonna put that individual on that litter and carry him to the helicopter. But if you request for a litter, then they have a litter aboard the aircraft that they're gonna swap out with you, so that way you're not down a litter. Because a lot of times soldiers will have these like strapped to the back of their vehicles or inside their vehicle, whatever the case might be. And if we give up that litter, now we're short one litter if we might need that for another situation later. So you kind of leave the soldier on the litter that you already had, put them on the bird, and then kind of that one litter that you requested for, kind of swap out with them. Now you can put that one back on the vehicle or wherever you had it located at to be able to utilize if you need it in another situation. Next up is line number 5, and that is the number of patients by type. Because there are 2 types of patients. There are ambulatory and litter patients. An ambulatory patient is one that can walk on their own. Maybe they've gotten wounded in the arm or some other case where they're not critical enough that they can't walk on their own. So they can walk to the helicopter on their own free will, maybe someone helping them a little bit, but it doesn't necessarily require them to be on a stretcher or on a litter. And then that second type is a litter, which means that they can't walk on their own. If they're unconscious, they're maybe heavily wounded in the leg, or their injuries are severe enough that it's not safe for them to be walking on their own, then they might be a litter patient. So you're basically describing how many patients are going to be carried on a litter and how many patients are able to walk on their own to the helicopter. Now that was line 5, so technically under most circumstances, as long as you get to that point, the bird maybe is starting to take off and on its way. You continue giving the rest of the lines for the medevac, but they can already kind of start their way to that grid you gave them. They already have an idea of how many patients they're gonna have, what the condition of those patients are, if they're urgent or priority or whatever the case might be, and what type of equipment they need to make sure is aboard that aircraft before they take off. Then from there, we move on to line number 6. Line 6 is the security of the pickup zone. So they want to know is there enemy in the area? Is there no enemy in the area? Is the pickup zone hot, meaning they're currently under fire and they couldn't move to another location because it just wasn't safe to do so. So they want to know what type of situation they're getting themselves into. Are they having to worry about enemy in the area? Do they need to request for maybe some kind of security to come with them? Maybe some Apaches or whatever the case might be. Someone else that's got some weaponry to be able to protect them while they're trying to do this medevac request. But you're basically telling them either there's no enemy in the area or there is enemy in the area, letting them know to have a heads up of what kind of situation they might be getting themselves into. Next, we move to line number 7, and that is the method of marking the pickup zone. So a soldier would have different ways to be able to mark the landing area for that helicopter to be able to see from the sky. There's things like smoke, there's gonna be things like VS-17 panels, which are like these just big pieces of like plastic that are reflective. You could have pyrotechnics, or you could have some other method that you're using to be able to signal to the helicopter where the landing zone is going to be at. Smoke is usually one of the more common ones. A lot of people like to use the VS-17 panels as well. It just kind of depends on what's easily available, what's ready. Sometimes it depends on, how far out they're gonna be or whatever the case might be. Now, when it comes to marking the pickup zone with smoke, I know like a lot of the advanced combat lifesaver type of courses usually emphasize that, over the radio when you're calling up this line, you emphasize that, hey, I'm using smoke, but you don't tell them what color smoke you're using until they're in the area. Because just in case somehow, someone was to intercept that, radio message, which would be very hard, but there's other probably, scenarios of why they do it this way, but that way they don't know what smoke you're gonna be using until they're close by and in the area. And then when they call up on the radio saying, hey, we're 2 minutes out, 1 minute out, you know, what color smoke are you using. Then you call them up over the radio, say we're popping, you know, red smoke, and then you go ahead and throw that smoke on out, and then they'll probably be able to see that red smoke in the distance and know that that's you and not just something else that's happened to be in the area on fire or an enemy, you know, trying to trick them, whatever the case might be, right? So that may or may not be kind of a current thing that a lot of people are using. I've heard it a lot of times in some of the training we've done where they emphasize that, but not all the time. Next up is line 8, and that is the patient's nationality. And we're not talking about, is this person Hispanic, Caucasian, African American? No, we're talking about, is this individual US military? Are they civilian? Are they maybe local national? Are they a POW? Those kind of situations, what they're wanting to know from this line. And now from there we get to the last line, which is line number 9, and that is chemical contamination. From here, they're wanting to know, is there any kind of chemical contamination, nuclear contamination, biological contamination, any sort of thing like that where they may need to use some kind of protective gear. Also, this helps give them a heads up if, you know, maybe the patient could possibly be somehow contaminated from some kind of chemical contamination, nuclear contamination, whatever the case might be. So you're just letting them know, is there any kind of chemical contamination in the area? If not, then simply the answer when you're giving off this line is none. And that is the 9 lines that make up a 9-line medevac, the official way that a soldier would be calling up to somebody to request for a medical evacuation of an individual. Now currently they have some other reports that kind of go along with this, especially if you're setting this up via the Blue Force tracker, the tracker system. They have this other report called a MIST, and so sometimes they'll want this via that JCR, that Blue Force tracker, that JVCP system, whatever system the soldiers or individuals are using, you know, at that time. They want that MIST report. They could be doing it over the radio. That's basically like the mechanism of the injury, the, you know, treatment they've already given. So just a bunch of different information. It's an acronym that soldiers use to be able to remember what information to give them, and that's an additional thing that nowadays they're usually wanting, is that MIST report to go along with that 9-line medevac. So my question to any of my veteran viewers out there, or active duty individuals that are currently serving the United States military, what is your experience with doing 9 lines maybe in training? If you unfortunately had the situation where you had to do a real one in real life, what is kind of your experience with working with the bird, or even just working with a training situation where you had to call up a 9-line medevac for training situations? I've done it quite a few times, like in training situations, thankfully never in real life, but a lot of training situations I've done it in where, you know, we're out in the field and, you know, they designate somebody to be the individual to call up the 9-line medevac back to the TOC, and then they relay that to the medics, or you're just calling it up straight directly to the medics, whatever the case might be. But it's definitely something that takes a little bit of practice. You have to be good on the radio to know your etiquette. You have to get it prepared. You don't want to be trying to do a 9-line medevac, you know, when you don't have all the information. You want to put all the information together on a piece of paper. Sometimes we have the little cheat sheet cards they'll write it onto, and then call it up line by line. So you're doing line 1, this and this and this, break. Line 2, this and this and this, break, and you're going through there. A key thing as well is when individuals are doing this over the radio, usually they say at the very beginning, break, 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 and that means like all communication needs to stop. Something that's very important that's about to come over the radio, typically a 9-line medevac, and then that individual starts giving out that 9-line medevac over the radio. But you don't want to try to do it all in one spiel. You're not doing line 1, such and such, such, line 2, such and such, such. Usually breaking up line by line, because there's probably somebody on the other end that has to write this stuff down. So you're doing line 1, break, line 2, break, and you're kind of going line by line. And then at the very end, after you get done with line number 9, you're asking how copy. And they're probably repeating it back, good copy, or they're saying something like, please say again line number 2, whatever the case might be, to be able to, you know, get all the information together, to be able to pass it off to the bird and all that information to be good to go and get that medevac out there and pick up that casualty. If any of you have any questions about this topic, also leave some comments down below with your questions. I'll try to help you out, or some of my other viewers maybe have some experience can help me out as well and answer your questions. If you enjoyed this video, kind of a little bit of an educational type of one, I think, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. If you want to check out some of these recommended videos, check those out. Links down in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'm ChrisChaos. I'll see you next time. See ya.